May 1999. A joint British-American expedition is about to climb the north face of Everest. But this is no ordinary summit attempt. The team is about to make mountaineering history in their search for evidence of two legendary British climbers who disappeared in 1924. Mountaineering's most enduring mystery is whether or not George Mallory and Sandy Irvine were the first climbers ever to reach the summit of Everest.
The highest elevation I've been is 23,500 feet. But coming here to Everest, there's a huge unknown between 23,500 feet and 29,000 feet. How am I going to do up there? And you can always go into these things thinking, oh, I'm going to be really strong and I'm fit and I'm confident and everything like this, but there's a certain element of my own physiology that I don't know about.
The physical problems of climbing Everest are, first of all, the obvious things like avalanche or frostbitten fingers. But there's other things like cerebral hemorrhage. You could have a stroke or even a heart attack. It's very tough on the body. And it's also tough on the soul. When you come back down, for weeks afterwards, you feel quite weird. And your family don't really recognize you.
Well, to me, what makes Everest special is surely its history. Especially the north face of Everest has a long history of exploration, and it holds one of the greatest mysteries in mountaineering, and that's what draws me to it.
What really draws me to this particular expedition is this hunt for Mallory and Irvine. You know, to climb this mountain again, I've been here enough, I know how to climb it. But to try and get inside somebody else's head and to try and touch a piece of history, that is utterly fascinating to me. You have a primitive attempt to do a huge undertaking, and any of those experiences just charges my batteries up, because mankind is having to rely on the human spirit alone, not on technology. And I think nowadays we are so heavy on technology, we lose the spirit end of it, and we don't have the heart and soul.
Oh yeah,
This is the Rongbuk Monastery, the world's highest religious community, and a place of pilgrimage for devout Buddhists. Yet the monastery was unknown to the Western world before Mallory and the other expedition members first came here in 1921. Ever since, it's become a place where climbers come to pay their respects before taking on the challenge of Everest.
Looks a lot different in this picture, huh?
That looks really remarkable. Looks like they are on the way into, just before arriving at base camp.
Yeah.
You know what really strikes me? How young and energetic George looks in that picture. He certainly looks different than the other.
Yeah.
He is not younger than the others, but
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Shows again what a remarkable man he was.
George Mallory was born in 1886 in Cheshire, the eldest son of a Church of England clergyman. He developed his passion for climbing at public school in Winchester, and after going to Cambridge, he became a teacher at another English public school, Charterhouse. It was here that he met Ruth Turner. After a whirlwind romance, They married in July 1914. Mallory was invited to join the 1921 reconnaissance to Everest, and he returned in 1922 and again in 1924. By this time, he was the only climber who'd been on all 3 expeditions.
I'm absolutely convinced that George Mallory climbed Everest back in 1924. I've got good reasons. First of all, they were seen going strongly for the top by Noel O'Dell. Secondly, they had good weather, they had oxygen. Thirdly, this was Mallory's last time on Everest. He just had to do something with his life. He was surrounded by other men in the climbing team who are very accomplished professional men. He hadn't really had a chance to fulfill his sort of early promise, and I think this is his big thing. And I think, fourthly, the spirit of the age was one of self-sacrifice. They just had a lot of deaths in the First War, and I feel that Mallory felt this is something worth dying for.
It was his 3rd attempt on Everest, and it was clearly his last attempt, because at the age of 38, he wouldn't have stood a high chance to be selected for another expedition. So I can imagine that he was in for an all-out effort on that final day, and I like the analogy with Sir Galahad, who disappeared when he touched the Holy Grail. I would guess he was very much in that mind, now it's all or nothing on this day.
George Mallory chose Andrew Irvine, the youngest member of the expedition, to join him on his final attempt on the summit. Irvine had little experience as a climber, but he was skilled at maintaining the fickle oxygen equipment that Mallory realized was the secret to reaching the summit. This is the last photograph of the 2 climbers, taken on the 6th of June, 1924. 2 days later, they were dead. One of the main objectives of this expedition is to recover a camera which George Mallory took with him to the top. If it's found, the negative could prove whether Mallory and Irvine really were the first to reach the summit, 29 years before Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing.
When I was a boy of 12, I met Howard Somervell, who was my great-uncle. Now, he was a great friend of Mallory's and climbing companion. Back in 1924, he had just had his summit attempt, got up to 28,000 feet, and taken a photograph on a little camera of his own. He came back down, exhausted, met up with George Mallory on the North Col, and George said, "I've forgotten my camera, can I borrow yours?" Now, Mallory was notoriously forgetful, and this wasn't, unexpected. So Uncle Somervell fished out his own VPK Kodak and handed it over. You pull out the bellows like this, and what you've got is a variable aperture with 4 different holes over the lens. The viewfinder is here, so you look down and you take a picture by pressing this shutter release. And this is what we're hoping to find up there. It's very small, and I'm hoping it'll be found in a pocket like this.
Noel O'Dell was the last person to see Mallory and Irvine alive. He saw them shortly after midday on the 8th of June, just a few hundred feet from the summit, and still going strong for the top. Clouds then rolled in, and they were never seen again. The next British expedition in 1933 recovered an ice axe which belonged to Andrew Irvine. It was found high on the northeast ridge, but nobody could be sure whether it was dropped or if it marked the site of an accident.
The advance party sets up base camp in a glacier valley at Rongbuk Monastery.
Then, in 1975, the Chinese organized their own expedition to the mountain. High on the north face of Everest, one of the climbers, Wang Hongbao, made an astonishing discovery. Shortly before he died, Wang told his story to his Japanese climbing partner.
He'd been a member of the first Chinese attempt to the summit in 1975. On the way, at about 8,150 meters, at the foot of a rock, he found the old remains of an Englishman. He was lying on his side. His clothes were very old, and if you took a pinch, you could blow it away. the remains were that old. There was a hole in the side of his face, big enough to put your fingers in. He'd found the really old remains of an Englishman. To people who climb Everest, the Mallory and Irvine disaster is legendary. If there really is a body that old at 8,150 meters, it could only be Mallory's or Irvine's. So I was really astonished.